TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop, come on, baby, higher.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for Fight Night Fortunes. UFC Fight Night with good friend and colleague Lou Finocchiaro. Most people know as GAMB LOU, as we're going to break down recap last week's UFC in Denver and talk about this week's card at the Apex in Las Vegas. Shout out to our proud sponsor and partnership, of course, with WagerWire. If you have not downloaded the app, please download the app. It's free, and I promise we will take care of you from there on. And of course, our new proud sponsor and partnership with Viva. Head on over to your local sports bar or wherever you indulge. Tell them JD from ECSI sent you. So without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Mr. Lou himself. Good afternoon, Lou.
Jeff, how are you? Happy to be here. We march on with another UFC card. This one from the Apex Center in Las Vegas.
I'm excited. I'm stoked. This is our third show of many. We started with UFC 303, of course, and last week we broke down, or I should say you broke down, UFC Denver. I have two takes from that from the card itself. What are your thoughts on the overall card? My two takes, as I said backstage, Mr. Silva is a bad man. In 303, a knockout win, and then 14 days later heads to Denver, faces hometown Mr. Dober. Stoppage, as I said backstage, that cut reminded me of a Rocky fight. Thoughts on Mr. Silva and that fight, and of course, was it the right to stop the fight of the judge's decision?
Well, again, Jeff, I appreciate you having me on. As far as that fight's concerned, I think you're dead right. Silva's shown himself to be an absolute finisher, and the UFC has a thirst for fighters and athletes that can come in and finish fights. The fact that he did it on short notice, had to traveled to Elevation to fight a guy on a full camp that was training at Elevation makes it all the more impressive. And so you have to keep an eye on Silva as a rising star in the featherweight or lightweight divisions. We'll see where his next fight takes place.
Secondly, the main event, the decisions were right, obviously. Thug Rose, great first round. I thought Tracy, and I'm probably wrong here, I thought she might have stole the second round. I thought Rose won the third and fourth round. I was really impressed with the finish in the fifth round. Tracy Cortez did not stop. As you talked about, the Bulldog kept coming and coming. Hadn't fought someone of that caliber, but overall, I left with a congrats, a hats off. I thought she fought pretty damn well, Lou.
She had nothing going for her. She was supposed to fight this week against a way different opponent. She did the UFC a favor as well, tried to strike lightning in a bottle by taking an ex-champion, a future Hall of Famer in the UFC, arguably, on short notice in Denver. Again, the same bit. And she didn't gas, and she showed herself well, as well she endears herself to the UFC. Both those athletes, Silva and Calvillo, will be the beneficiary of favorable situations in the next few fights.
The overall card, from your eyes as the expert here, anything surprise you? Anyone come up short? Anyone really shock you with the outcomes, the fights, the styles?
Couple times this year, there have been fighters that were getting their brakes beat off of them, and they found a way to, either through a penalty or just a stoppage, weasel their way out of the fight into a no decision. And I think that the UFC is going to eventually have to address some of that one way or another. In this last fight, it was Brundage. I don't want to pick on the kid, but he wanted a way out. He found a way out. Before him, a kid on this card, Lusa, on the same card, who fought Don Fiend. His previous fight, he did the same thing. I'd like to see something done about that. Other than that, it was a good card. And really, once we get finished with the card by Sunday morning, my focus is now on the next week, and it's hard for me to go back too much on them.
Next week, a pay-per-view event. This week, as you said, Las Vegas at the Apex. In our email chain, we're going to break down 4 fights here. I have DraftKings again in front of me as we speak. The first fight, Cody Durden versus Bruno Silva. Currently, I got Durden minus 115, Silva minus 105, and over under a 2.5 rounds to the over minus 215. That's what I'm seeing right now, Lou.
That's correct. And in this fight, Bruno opens minus 160. So money came in on Durden. He's taller, he's longer, he's younger. He's a wrestling-based fighter, and he does most of his work not through power, but through attrition, meaning he has a great cardio, great top pressure. I've been taught that kryptonite to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is, oh, by the way, what Bruno Silva practices besides profuse power in his hands. That kryptonite to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is world-class wrestling. Durden, I wouldn't say is a world-class wrestler, but he has the mettle to be a really top-end wrestler. And so for this reason, his size, his youth, his wrestling, the fact the fight's in the States, I lean to Durden here in this fight against Bruno Silva. And so oftentimes I will disagree with line movement. Sometimes I'll agree with it. In this particular case, I will agree with it. Now, what I will say is that Durden has been submitted in prior fights. Bruno Silva's a deft submission artist, so Durden has to mind his P's and Q's.
So right now you said, what did you have for an opening number on this one, Lou?
Minus 160 to Silva. So you see money come in on Durden.
Money on Durden. Okay. Next fight we have on board here. Let me see here. I'm trying to get my card in front of me here. Maverick and Barboza. Let me scroll up a little here. Currently on DraftKings, Miranda Maverick minus 225, Dion Barboza plus 185, under over 2.5, Lou, minus 330 to the over.
Jeff, anytime you see two women fighting in a cage, you're going to know that the over-under is 2.5 and that it's going to be 240 minimum or higher. The lower you get in weight, the less finish rate you get. And if you go to women's fights, you surely get mostly decisions and not any form of finishes. So that total number doesn't surprise me a bit. And in this fight, Maverick was who was going to fight Tracy Cortez this week. So now Maverick also loses her opponent. However, she trains in Denver and trains at Elevation. Now she's fighting in Vegas, so she doesn't have to fight there, but she's the beneficiary of training at Elevation. She's a sawed-off little shotgun wrestler. just sitting outside the top 15, but she wants to be just inside the top 15. And now she gets a gal in Barboza, a Brazilian fighter that's taking her sophomore fight, and she's going to be a little taller, and she's surely older. The issue is that she's less experienced than Maverick. Maverick's been in the cage with a far more affluent fighter, Aaron Blanchfield, an elite fighter. And I just think Maverick's tenacity, wrestling, and pressure will be too much for the Brazilian here in a tough spot for Maverick's opponent, Barboza, and a really good spot for Miranda Maverick to get her hand raised and try and enter into the top 15 of the women's flyweight division.
The third fight we have here, let me get my numbers here. Garcia. DraftKings moving all over here on me. Bear with me, sir. Steve Garcia and Sungwoo Choi. Garcia minus 148. Choi plus 124. Over under. Juice to the under minus 1.5 currently right now. Minus 195. If you like the over, nice plus price here at plus 150, Lou.
Two assassins are going to get after one another. Sungwoo Choi, a good, strong fighter, Muay Thai base, needs to stand up and have some room here. He's used to being the taller, longer fighter. In this case, he's not going to be either. Garcia's going to be taller and longer as well. He's a lefty. Garcia is a Mexican heritage fighter who carries many attributes of the Mexican fighter. He doesn't begin to fight until he gets tagged. He's tough as nails. He can fight all day. And in this case, he throws very straight punches with tremendous power. He's been active. His opponent has really not been. His opponent's also been iced before. I think this is a really favorable matchup for Garcia in a fight that's going to be competitive for a couple rounds, but I see Garcia as the victor in this fight and probably wins it in the third round, if not a one-sided decision.
And the main event, I'm going to scroll to the bottom here. Amanda Lemos, currently plus 114 versus Verna Jandiroba. Is that correct?
Jandiroba. Yeah, both Brazilian ladies, both very good fighters, both in the top 10. And the winner really now gets talked about as a potential championship contender, while the other gets set back a notch or two. Lemos, probably the more familiar name, really aggressive, unbelievable power in her hands and her kicks, very aggressive striker, also can submit. Her opponent, Jandiroba, well less pronounced with her striking. She's way more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialized. She needs to get up close, get a hold of you, grab an arm, a leg, your neck, whatever, and try and make this a roll. I think on the ground, if they do begin to roll, Jandiroba probably has advantage and more than likely will try and take the fight there. And on the Lemos side, she'll try and keep it standing and from distance absolutely beat the brakes out of Jandiroba, who's going to have to make advances in order to get the clasp. And so there is the dynamic of the fight. Can Jandiroba get in and get the clasp? Can Lemos keep her outside at the end of her strikes? It's going to be a great stylistic fight. Should be a great matchup.
Next week, pay-per-view, Manchester, England. I know we're concentrating, obviously, on this card and this fight. Your eyes peeking over to next week. Do you have any tickets already in tow, or are you seeing any of those numbers really starting to move and shake up?
Those numbers have been moving. We've been contributing to some of that. GambLou.com members are active in 3 or 4 fights already, and that's one thing you're going to get. You're not going to just get a focus on this week's card. As soon as lines are out, they're recorded here, and if they're such that we think that we can get ahead of a position, I have no qualms moving the day they open, the minute they open, a week later. It makes no difference. So the GambLou.com followers are used to having various outlets. They know the outlets that we have to have in order to make those early moves, and we are very aggressive in doing that.
I talked last week about this. I hinted, and you came across, and you had some great words of knowledge on this. I talked about Mr. Pereira. I talked about the love affair that Dana White has with John Jones. It so reminds me of Bill Belichick when anyone tries to discredit Lawrence Taylor. There'll only be one Lawrence Taylor. It doesn't matter what defensive guy comes across. There's no comparison in Bill's eyes. The same child, the eyes light up like a Christmas tree when Dana is talking about John Jones. Some hints on social media, John Jones and Pereira. I asked you the question last week. Any chance that they're formulating this? You said we talked about Pereira staying where he is. He's a good meal ticket for him. He gets up into that heavyweight division, as you said last week. There's a handful of guys that could pose some problems. Is it just Dana White sufficing the media, or is there any little traction maybe towards potentially somewhere down the road with this?
Well, I agree with John Jones being the GOAT. And John Jones isn't the GOAT because he's stupid. John Jones, they could talk about him fighting anybody they want. I absolutely do not believe he'll fight Pereira. I don't believe it's going to happen. I do believe that a lot of stuff gets out there and is rumored. John Jones is going to fight Stipe Miocic. He's going to take his belt and his moniker for GOAT, and he's going to walk off. That's what's going to happen. Now, if something else happens and money brings him out and he and Pereira have a super fight, okay, what are the lines and how can I get involved? But I don't see it happening. He's not a dummy. He's going to beat Stipe and right off into the sunset.
If I asked you today, Lou, what is Lou's opening number, Pereira versus John Jones?
Lou always answers that the same way. Lou bets into numbers. Lou does not give out. That's not what I do. I bet into the number.
So you, just off the top of your head, I have no idea what John Jones minus 195.
John Jones against Godzilla. Jones is minus 1,000. Next question.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answers your question.
That answers the question for sure. Manchester next week, pay-per-view. Is it for us guys back east here? Is it like a 3 p.m. start for us? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, that's the good news, Jeff. Those fights are going to be broadcast to the American audience. Now that's creating quite a stink in England, although I've never known the English people to be too upset about drinking beer at 4 a.m, which just happens there all the time anyway. But that's what's going to happen there in Manchester, because those fights, by the time Aspinall ends up fighting Blades, and then the main event between Muhammad and Leon Edwards goes off, it'll be 4 a.m. Sunday in England, and it'll be 9 o'clock at night here for us. They're about 8 hours ahead or so. So those are the facts. The athletes are getting used to it, but we have the benefit of watching in our prime time, which will be really nice. That's a card you don't want to miss. There's some great fights on it, some great England or people in that general geographic region against the world fights. Should be really a super card.
The scroll has been going the whole time. Everyone knows on Twitter they can go find you at GAMB LOU, at VSiN, Sports Grid, Bout Business Podcast, gamblou.com, and of course can send an email to lou@gamblou.com. But as we always end here, Lou, the stage, the octagon is yours. Tell everyone what you have to offer, and where they can find it.
Well, I only worked a select amount of sports. I shoot with a rifle, not a gun. I try and serve my clients through specialization, not myself, because I'm not a pick seller. Gamblou.com is where you can go to see what I do. I also have a tab up there, and it's called the San Xavier Mission. A percentage of gross proceeds that come into GAMB LOU go to the mission. It's the oldest mission in the United States. It's just south of Tucson. I'm happy to lead the charge in people that have contributing a little bit to those in need. And other than that, I'm preparing for the NFL. That's a tremendous amount of work. I'm going through Warren Sharp's 550-page diatribe right now. I'm about 60 or 65% through. Another 8 days, I'll be through it, and then I'll be ready to tee off and speak about some advantage in the NFL.
Well, we can't wait. This weekend's card, again, live at the Apex in Vegas, next week in Manchester, England, pay-per-view. As always, go follow Lou at GAMB LOU, and you can follow me, of course, at EC Sports Investors. Everyone, run to the window. Let's cash some tickets. Let's have some fun in the octagon. We'll catch Lou again at this same time next week. Tomorrow, we'll be back with the closing bell at 5 p.m. Myself and Riley Magnuson will get back into the baseball swing. But till then, everyone, enjoy yourselves. Have a great, great day, and see you soon.